As Jose says, my name is Berta. I'm an iOS developer at Travel Perk. If you don't know what it is, that's okay. It's a travel business company. If you want to know more, let me know later. I also have some stickers. And my talk is Hey Focus and how to get the most out of your day. And I forgot what the clicker is. There it is. So first of all, disclaimers. There's a couple of ones that I need to add. The first one is that I'm a bit out of it. I got my phone stolen this morning, and it was not great. So I'm coming out of that adrenaline. So if I take a couple of minutes, this is why. Sorry about that. The second one is I am Spanish, and the Spain match is going on right now, so half of my brain is also a little bit distracted by the World Cup. Sorry. I was supposed to speak before the match, but I asked to change it. So those were like the new added disclaimers. The other ones is that even though my talk is on focus, I am the most disorganized, out of focus person you will ever meet. There is a reason I'm giving this talk. This is what I had to learn by myself. You know those videos that you see of people that wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, and by the time it's 8 a.m., they have done everything, and their kitchen is spotless, and you look at them with a mix between rage and absolute jealousy of how they can be like that? Yeah, I'm on the opposite side. If you are one of those persons, kudos. Life must be fantastic for you. Feel free to watch the World Cup during my talk. You can get up and leave. Not me, so yeah. ¿Otro? Spain. I asked them to give me like hand signals every time. So if my mood dips, that's because Japan scored a goal. Sorry. So as I said, oh shit, I want to add. As I said, focus is hard, and it's specifically hard for me. So I'm not an expert. Everything is about an experience that I went through, and I thought it would be useful for other things, and it's specifically tailored for work. Do whatever you want in your real life, okay? And it's also, if you have ADHD or you are neurodivergent, this might not apply, because I'm not, sorry. And it will probably not fix your entire life, but hopefully it will change a little bit of your perspective on how you do things. So those are my disclaimers, okay? Let's start. Like 8 months ago, there was a weird situation where my PO left my squad, and it was quite big, and I ended up basically just taking over as one of the oldest persons in the mobile team because everyone else was new, and I was doing squad lead and PO and iOS development, and it was a lot. And this was me every week. Oh, shit. Not because the workload was a lot, the oh shit was because I was going through life like on a bad planned grocery run. You know when you go to the supermarket and you're only supposed to pick up 2 things, so that you don't grab a basket, but as you go through the supermarket, you keep remembering that you needed more things, and now you have a pile of things with both of your hands, and every time you move, one falls off, and when you go pick up the one fall off, another one falls off, and you're never leaving that supermarket and everyone is looking at you. Yeah, that was me, like 8 months ago. But the things that fell off were not supermarket items. They were basically things that my team needed. They were catch-ups, they were stand-ups, they were definitions, they were documentation, there were PRs, interviews. From time to time, at least once a week, there was something that made me go, fuck, I forgot that. I should have added as a disclaimer, I sweat a lot, sorry. And it was overwhelming, and obviously it makes you feel like hell, and you do so much work, and I was putting in a lot of extra hours, which I would not recommend to do, and yet things kept falling off. Like my hands could only take so much, right? So I realized I needed to stop and do something better because I lived in this hell space of life, and I was burning myself out. And I thought a couple of times of changing jobs. Like, I was like, okay, this is too much. This situation is, I hate it, I'm gonna switch jobs. And I talked to a bunch of my developer friends, and I came to the realization that they were pretty much doing the same thing and they were okay. That it probably was not the workload. I mean, it was quite a high workload, but it probably wasn't the workload, it was probably me. So I talked to my manager, and basically in a nice way, he said to me, stop. He told me I should stop doing so many things, and I needed to refocus, because I realized going to another company would only help for the the first 3 months when you're onboarding and everything is chill, if your company is nice, I guess. And so I did what every developer does when you have a problem and you don't know how to solve it, and you know the problem is you, is that I Googled it. And I Googled, how can I do more with the same amount of time? I don't want to put a 15-hour days. I want to just have a lot more impact, and I want to be able to be the person that my team needs. So I Googled that, and after, I think I read 55 or so live hacker Medium blog posts, and saw a lot of videos by life coaches. Basically, this is how it was summarized, right? Avoid distractions, stop not sleeping, and cut all of your bad habits. They meant alcohol and these bad habits and smoking. Don't drink coffee, write better to-do list, do focus time on your calendar, use Pomodoro. It was basically a lot of really good tools. But I will tell you, most of them didn't work. Some of them I keep doing, like mindfulness, meditation. The no coffee, that was never an option. I don't know if any of you have tried to quit coffee. I did. Horrible. Don't do it. You're stuck for life. The lack of sleep and bad habits, well, if I'm not willing to cut off coffee, I'm not willing to cut off beer either, so that's already a bad thing. And the to-do list, in 2 weeks, it looked like that. Now, tell me how fun it is on your first cup in the morning at 7 a.m. to look at this. It's not. Then I tried the focus time calendar. It's something that seemed to work for a while. At the beginning, it was this. It was fine. I had a bunch of builder time, which means code and stuff, and everything else looked fine. And then, you know, a week or so later, life happened, and it became an unorganized mess where if you don't want to do the visual math, I have uninterrupted 35 minutes for Xcode here. So on an entire day. So, and most of the days end up looking like that. So that did not work. They were kind of band-aids to the problem, like when you know that a part of the app needs to be refactored, but you don't have the time, so you move some code around, split it into functions, rename them, clean it up a little bit, but you know that the problem is still there, you just made it look a little bit prettier. It was the same thing. It was not working. Some things I kind of still do, like block time calendars, but I was still basically didn't have a basket and I had too many things in my hand. So again, my manager was like, no, but what I said wasn't reorganize your shit. What I said was to stop doing so much shit, which, yeah, fair point. So I was like, okay, we need to go back, learn again. So I talked to a bunch of people at work that have very high level of leadership, that handle a lot of different things. How do you do it that you actually have time and you're not going insane? Because honestly, I'm going insane. And they said, oh, you should use this value that we have at the company called impact over effort. Now, they had told me about this value before, but I wasn't listening. So I didn't really. So they told me about it, impact over effort. Sometimes focus means saying no to things. But those were my first two questions. What if I already said yes? And what if I cannot say no? And so one of the leaders actually used to be a PM, introduced me to a PM thing that they use for features called a prioritization matrix, which is actually a quite intuitive tool. You can see it on the graph here. It's basically impact and effort. So something that takes very little effort and has a high impact, it's an easy win. Tackle that. Do it, you know? Something that has a lot of effort, very low impact, is a money pit. Don't get close to it. It's fine, move on. And everything else is either a really big bet, has a lot of impact, but could have a lot of effort, or is an incremental thing, which would be like a more day-to-day. Now, this looked really fun, and I started playing around with it and look at everything that I do every day and the projects that I was involved with. Yes, I said projects with an S. I was involved in more than one, into this matrix. But quickly I realized two very important things that this matrix does not take into account. One is humans are horrible about estimating time. We are. We're just not really good at it. The other one is that we're also very bad at overestimating impact. So we go on the side of too little on the time, and we assume that whatever we do is going to have a lot of impact and value, on the other side. And all the time doesn't look like that. So I went a little bit deeper into Google, and I found a better version of that prioritization matrix, which I liked better, which is negative and everything else is positive, but would be things that you don't want to do, but let's face it, you'll probably end up doing either way, and projects you would like to consider. I like that one a lot more. So I had 3 projects that I was planning on starting at that time. And Spain is an iOS conference for in Logroño for iOS developers, and I was proposing my company to be a sponsor for it. So that was the project. The other one was setting up our actual app for Swift UI and Combine. Since I'm the expert on React and Eric Swift in the company, the Combine part was mine. And the other one was that I was really mad at our test and how long it took me to do everything. So I had this idea on how to refactor all of the tests and how we do mocks. So those were really big projects. And my Damas was trying to attempt to do all of them. So I put them through a prioritization matrix. And it was a bit surprising, because it said that the best one was actually the unit testing refactoring, which I thought it was going to be the Swift UI. But it makes sense when you think about it, because it's the one that has the biggest impact for the lowest amount of effort. We have a team of 15 people. My job will have basically clear up the path for them to code faster. So when you think about it, that makes sense. The second was the Swift UI and Combine. It was like, might set you up for the future, but who knows what Apple is going to do in June, you know? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe not. We'll see. And obviously, the one that was not worth my time was the NS Spain sponsorship. Now, people who just met me, which one do you think I did? Huh? The NS Spain one, yes, you are correct. I actually tried to attempt to do most of them. I took full ownership of the NS Spain one. I took sort of like a guidance role on the Swift UI and passed it on to people on my team that were actually really interested on learning Combine and Swift UI. So I was more of a mentor. And I sort of set up the blueprint for the first unit test and mocks, and then let the rest of the team do it on their own ownership of the app. Right? Like, it sounded like a very smart plan. It was not a very smart plan, because what happened is that everything took longer. I was a mentor for one. I was doing the full thing for NS Spain, and I was the point of contact for the rest. So if my work already had a lot of catch-ups and meetings, imagine the Slack messages now. That was not a fantastic idea. And I did the NS Spain because it was the one that I wanted to do the most. I didn't care what the prioritization matrix did. That was the one that it brought me joy and I wanted to do. So I used this entire tool and I learned all prioritizing matrix to completely ignore it. Yeah, it was very fun. My manager at this point, I don't know how he didn't quit the company. He went on a 2-week vacation, so I think that was his way. And I was back in the middle of like July, August, basically burning out and doing 15-hour days, because I had the entire morning for catch-ups with finance, legal, marketing, and branding. By the way, the stickers that I mentioned come from the sponsorship, and I designed them. Why am I designing stickers, you ask? I don't know, but it happened. And if you want some, I have them with me. One of them includes this beautiful dog. So I was still feeling I was doing too much, because again, I didn't stop because I don't know how to read signs. And I actually considered quitting iOS in general and just backpacking through somewhere. I don't know. Like, it wasn't even a plan. I was just done. I couldn't keep going like this. And even though I was putting in a lot more hours and my work was a little bit more organized, so I wasn't really dropping any of my groceries on the floor, the team didn't really feel like I was leaving them out so much. I was burnt out. And I don't know if you've been burnout and on a caffeine high at the same time, or you have my personality. I snap at people, and it wasn't pretty. Like, it wasn't great to talk to me during those times. And for anyone that ever watches this and had to deal with that, I apologize. But it wasn't great. I wasn't having a great time. Don't ask me about my August. Like, not fantastic. So I had to keep doing some research. And one day, losing a bunch of my time that I didn't have on TikTok, I found this woman promoting this book. It's called The No Club. And it's basically a bunch of women in universities, well, they're like actual deans of universities, that made a lot of research over a span of 5 to 7 years about this concept that they created called non-promotable tasks. Because that was the thing, even though everyone kept telling me, stop doing so many things, all of the things needed to be done. They were necessary. And I really like this definition because it said a non-promotable task matters to the organization. It just will not help you as a person doing it. And because that's what I kept seeing. I was like, yes, I know I'm doing a lot, but those things need to be done. This type of work has to be done. Someone has to do it, right? But it was just really screwing with me over. So the rest of the talk is going to be me teaching you how to be selfish. So the No Club sets a list of what they have done all of these interviews with women all around on every field that they can imagine on what are the most common non-promotable tasks. Again, tasks that are necessary for your companies to work and for organization to work, but they will not help you personally. And those are the most uncommon. Now, does anyone want to guess how many I was doing? All of them, yes, I was doing all of them. It was pretty much my entire day of this, right? Which, in the moment that I got to that part of the chapter, I remember closing the book and being in my sofa and get up and start cursing things out loud. Because, yeah, I was doing all of them. Now, I'm going to do another little disclaimer sidebar. As you've seen on the book cover, it specifically talks about women. In general, a lot of these tasks, non-promotable tasks, are given to women a lot. They're giving us opportunities. They're burdened by the fact. I'm not going to focus on that part of the talk because in my case, I analyzed it, and it was just me being a dumbass and lizard brain. It had nothing to do with my gender. That would be much faster to do the talk. But in a lot of organizations, they are specifically given to women, and the book does focus on that. So if you want to pick it up, I highly recommend it. It's going to make you think about who does what on your team very differently. Okay, sidebar done. Let's go back to the task. Non-promotable task. How do you find if a task that you're doing is non-promotable, right? So there are 4 questions. Is the task instrumental to your organization? Is the performance on your task visible? Because let's face it, if I was about to be burned out for like 4 months, doing a lot, but at the end of it, they present me with an award, I wouldn't be doing this talk. I would probably been okay with it, or a raise. But it was actually hurting my career, even though I was doing more hours than I've ever worked in my fucking life. So visibility is a very important thing, and non-promotable tasks usually are not visible to anyone in your organization. And now that we work remotely, that's even worse. So does the task require specialized skill? Now, the design was very nice, and that does require some talent from my part of Googling and almost copying someone else's design. But most of the things that I was doing of moving information and helping other people on documentation didn't really require the actual skill I have been hired for as an iOS developer, which are the skills that they pay me for. So those tasks could have probably been delegated to someone else, because that's not a specialized skill. And does the task let you develop a skill or puts you in relationship with someone else important? Like if the CEO comes and says, I wanna do a project, even if that's not your skill, maybe having a conversation or a connection with your CEO, that's important, right? So those are pretty much summarize everything that I had been doing for the past 3 months and the hours that I had spent. I don't know if you're trying to add those hours up, but they go a little bit over 40. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. It's like a week and a half in a week. And so that was like most of what I was doing. And one of the more important parts for me was the instrumental to the organization. Like, what is instrumental? So it teaches you the concept of what organizational currency means, what your company values. You know when you go to those leadership meetings and all hands, that they always repeat the same words over and over and what's important, what are we focusing on this quarter, and you pretty much gloss over it because you're thinking about a PR that you have open or a bug or something like that. Well, I went back to those, and I realized what they were talking about, and I realized there was an entire correlation of the way they were talking about it and the teams and the people who got praise and promotions and got value inside of the company, because they were directly affecting those values. So getting to know, writing down for me what my organizational currency, what TravelPerk values as a company and how it measures it, really helped me decide which were the tasks that I was doing that were definitely non-promotable and were definitely affecting me. So I did that, and I put stars next to it. I think this is at the beginning of my journey, a couple of months ago. I should change this. I think the communication one probably would be a 2, and the miscellaneous would be a 1, if I was to be much clearer now that I know more about this. But yeah, you can see a promotability, and you immediately probably can see my issue, which is there. Sometimes it went to 20 hours a week with a probability of 1. So that was my problem. That was the entirety of my problem, you know? I needed to get rid of a lot of those stuff, or I needed to rethink about how I was doing that and how much money I was spending. So I had to optimize my work, because that's the thing. If you do a lot of NPs like me, and you're basically just holding people together, but not being able to focus on yourself, I was not going anywhere. But if you drop all of them, you will get fired, unfortunately. All of us do NMPs, even if we don't realize it. We do a lot more things than just stare at Xcode and code. And the more you grow in seniority at a company, the more you do about them. So being able to actually optimize how much hours you spend on them and which ones do you choose is really important. Like, the first question is, which NMPs does your company expect you to do? Probably one of them would be doing interviews, interviewing other iOS developers. Also, probably would be going on to catch-up meetings, stand-ups, actually answering people on Slack. I'm pretty sure if you stop doing those, you will probably get fired. So once you take those aside and you amount the time that they take you to do, then you need to choose what NMP load is best for you. So if you're a mid-levels developer and you want to become a senior, you probably want to reduce your NMP load to almost minimal. Like, only the ones that won't get you fired. You want to be able to have as much time to focus on the code and learn and grow yourself in that way. If you're going on the other side, you're trying to go into a management position or squad lead or something like that, you probably want to do the opposite. You probably want to try to see if you can get away with doing half of your time on NMP work, being a lot more valuable to people on definitions and processes and product-wise. And also there is the third question of which NMPs actually you like doing. There's probably some that you don't mind doing. I personally love doing interviews. Probably because I have a problem with control, and since I started the team at TravelPerk, I like controlling everyone that enters. So if you ever apply, you will get an interview with me. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad, but I love interviews. So out of all of them that I have to do for my job, that's the one that I know I'm going to prioritize. I'm going to do it unconscious because I like doing them, and I like doing them a lot more than I like being in catch-ups, for example, or doing documentation. So if I can find someone in my team that prefers doing documentation than interviewing people, that's the perfect teammate for me. You know, we just split the work. So you can use that, you can use this to optimize a little bit, look at your work a little bit differently. And so I did. Unfortunately, I cannot show you the actual graph that my manager has. We run it through legal, and that was a big no-no, sorry. But basically, I wrote down an entire Notion page with all of my graphics and all of the work and the hours, my load for the quarter, and what I prefer, and everything else, I found people that had to take that on their work. And how I found them is I basically went to the careers page at TravelPerk, and I looked at the definition of engineering managers, and it said things that I was doing myself. So I just called an engineering manager, and I was like, hey, maybe that's part of your work and not a non-promotable work. So in the couple of, I went from being completely overwhelmed and being able to not have any meetings to actually going back to review a PR, which I hadn't done in like a month and a half. And being able to actually have 4 hours of code time, which was kind of fascinating. And I basically just delegated a lot of words, MPT's work. Now, now it starts. Now, after doing this and actually taking the entities into account on my work, things have been going much better for me. I'm no longer burnout, which is a big plus. I don't work 15 days hours sometimes. I sometimes don't even make 8. And yet still my team knows that I'm there. I'm not dropping things. I'm able to actually finalize projects. It's been pretty great. It didn't solve everything, but it's been helping a lot, and it specifically helps me have conversations and say no, and tell people exactly why I say no. Because a lot of this NPTS comes to you, and it seems like a good thing. They go like, oh, you told us that the process of the interview wasn't really great. We want to actually redo it. Would you help us? It feels like an honor, right? Like they're asking you to be involved in doing the interview process better. You know you can do it better because it sucked before. You told them that. So it seems like a good thing, right? But it's an MPT work. It's not gonna count probably, and it's gonna take a lot longer than you think. So before you say yes, and don't use the first phrase, which is not mine, I will just do it because I already know how. I've used this one a lot. You can let someone else take the ownership. You can pass the work to someone that maybe hasn't done any NPTs lately, that maybe should be more involved into the company and into those processes of a team. If the task will take time to answer. Don't immediately say yes or no. If the task they're asking you to do is gonna take time to answer. I said it twice because I'm saying it to myself mostly. And that I added that myself specifically. A month from now, you will be busy. Like someone will ask you like, oh, we're doing this big thing to recruit developers in January. Could you help? And I look at my calendar in January and I go like, yeah, it's pretty free. No, it won't be. Not when January is there. Not when it's the 17th of January, it won't be free. I know myself, it's free now, but it won't be. And it will happen the same to you. So even though it feels like you have the time right now, you will probably be busy. And that was probably the hardest one for me to accept. You're a team player, you're part of a team, even if you're saying no. Even if you're saying no to doing interviews, even if you're saying no to being a mentor, even if you're saying no to tackling a big project of refactoring, you're still part of the team and you're still a team player. You're just prioritizing your time for what you think is important for you. And your teammates should also acknowledge that, and if they're not horrible human beings, respect it. So that's how you do yourself. Now, the part that is going to be harder, and hopefully I can do this talk again, and it's actually been implemented, is what companies should do. A lot of this work that I was doing, a lot of this glue work that I was doing, I was doing it especially because I knew the app and I knew the product in a way that no one else knew for how fast we grew. These NPTs should have been taken into account. This should have been taken into account on my quarterback brief. That should have have had an incentive. It should have been measured. And if you look at an NPT that a lot of your developers do, and you realize that they do it, and it takes them a lot of hours, and they cannot stop doing it, maybe that should be another job. Maybe that someone should have that as part of their job. Maybe there's a position that you're missing in management. And at the end of the day, this is work that is essential to the organization. It's just it's not gonna be taken into account. And hopefully add a lot of them to the performance review. I'm in the process of communicating all of this and using myself as an example. So hopefully one day I can tell you if my company actually has done it and we finished everything and if it worked. The first one is that we added a lot of these MPTs to the performance review. So if you do a lot of interviews right now at Travel Perk, it actually counts toward your performance and towards being a senior, that was the first little win. I will let you know how it goes. And I will send out a link to a non-Travel Perk version of what I did, if you want to go through the graphs and write down everything that you do, and you want to follow these exercises. I will put it on the Slack. And that's it. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. I do anything now?
We have some questions for you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Fernando says, thank you for sharing your self-knowledge. Don't you think that as a tech market has big turnover, those MPTs are very helpful for getting your next job?
So yes, they are the things that actually people look at the most. If you put them on your LinkedIn and your CV, like if you put things like, oh, I created a guild inside of iOS so we could all communicate to each other and I run it, the interviewer will probably on your next job ask you about it, right? And I think that's great, but in 6 to 8 months or a year, you're gonna find yourself in the same position. Running and creating a guild into the new company, it's gonna be great for your resume, but everyone else on your team is gonna get promoted and you're gonna have to go work for somewhere else to actually get promoted again. Because it's those things that companies think that that's what they want, that's the type of people and drive that they want, but what they need at the end of the day and the reason why they hire us is to do iOS code. That's it, that's pretty much it. Unless you're an engineering manager, then those are different. At the end of the day, the things that take you time out of actually coding and creating features, that's something that they're paying you a shit ton of money that someone else could be doing. And when you do promotions and stuff, it happens. For me, I personally did not want to leave my company. So it was an option. I didn't want to leave. So.
Okay, so how do you see the idea that maybe some of your team refuses to do a task because it's not their responsibility? Do you see it as a lack of ownership or respecting its role?
Yes and no. So I can only speak for my team. They're not assholes, to start. That's the thing. Responsibility changes. 5 years ago, there were a lot of my responsibilities and that weren't part of it. Like if the CI fell down, I didn't have to fix it. And now it's part of my responsibility and ownership. How this type of companies are created and what's your responsibility changes all the time. So if a teammate goes like, I don't think that's part of my responsibility, then someone should go, yes, it is for these specific reasons. If that teammate refuses to do that, then maybe it's not a great teammate for the company. But if someone tells you, oh, I don't want that responsibility because it's too much, but it's completely necessary for the team, but no one wants to take that on them for their own personal reasons or professional, then maybe that should be a job.
I think the same. Okay, with all the tech layoffs, it's a scary time to try not to overwork, especially as a non-senior. Yeah. How can we communicate being overworked without getting fired?
Okay, so FYI, I'm not a senior. I did in the middle of doing this was my review, and it was not great. So that's one of the reasons. It was also the push to do that. It's hard. I think the first conversation has to start with ourselves. Like, for example, without realizing, one of the first things that I dropped was PR reviews, and it was very noticeable. And at the end of the day, that's the feedback that everyone else is going to give you, you know? So the legal team loves me, but they are not giving me my feedback review. And you have to be a little bit analytic about these things. So it is hard, and you're going to try not to overwork, so go back to the basics. Go back to the 4 questions. Hold on, I can find it.
It's not getting presented.
There. Is it instrumentable? Is it visible? And does it require a specialized skill? So if you don't want to overwork and you don't know where to start cutting things off, ask yourself that. Does it require your specialized skill, as in you're an iOS developer? Is it instrumental to the organization? And is it visible? Let's say you work 35 hours a week. If 30 of your hours are spent doing something that hits those 3 spots, it's very unlikely you get fired. Unlikely, please don't sue me. But it will be very unlikely that you get fired because that's what they hired you for. If you only do 15 or 10 hours of things that pass these 3 questions, being instrumental, visible, and it requires you a specialized skill, then let's find out how you can do more hours of that.
Okay, let's go with the last one. How do you feel about helping others being a non-promotable task?
Oh yeah, no, I see the irony of this being a non-promotable task. I am very aware of that. Again, a non-promotable task is also you do the ones that fulfill you, and for me, this is important. And I feel that if I had seen this talk, maybe, I wouldn't have spent 8 months until I start seeing positive change. So if it helps someone else, I'm okay with it. But also, I have a much better work balance right now, so I was able to take that on, which is awesome.
Okay. By the way, you have a question, but that is not a question, but says,
Okay.
thank you so much that this was inspirational.
Oh, I'm glad. Don't make the same mistakes I did. And don't work 15-hour days.
Okay.
It's horrible.
Let's give Berta a big applause.